Hey guys, it's me, Holly Madison. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a little Q&A about the secrets of documentary. I'm not saying the whole name of the documentary because I get flagged. So if you hit the like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. But I'll be answering your questions, so let's get going. You guys, I'm just having one of those days because my dog is like Houdini now. He has escaped from both of my houses one time each in the last 2 weeks. And I'm like, how? So the first time I got a call, I was out with the kids and I got a call from somebody in my LA neighborhood. And they're like, oh, we found your dog all the way by Lake Hollywood, which is kind of far from my house. And I'm like, how did he escape? Because my backyard is fenced off, or at least a portion of it is. But somebody left the gate unlatched. And then I'm in Vegas and I'm out at an appointment and I get a call like, I found your dog at this corner and this corner. I'm like, what is happening? Luckily my dog is safe, but still, you know, when you have those moments, the adrenaline is still not filtered out of my body. I'm still like I feel like my whole day was wrecked because of dog crisis. And it turns out, and at first I was tripping out because I'm like, well, there's only one door in and out of the backyard. How did he get out? And the neighbor who found him was like, oh, I saw your pool guy stop by today. So first world problem, the pool guy let him out, but whew, stressful. So I'm just doing a little last minute get ready with me. I feel like my whole day was thrown off because of that. Like I had such a productive day planned and now all I want to do is like cuddle with my boo or something. I'm just like, ugh. We'll try and get what I can done. So anyway, I'm gonna do a quick get ready with me Q&A. I asked for questions specifically about the secrets of documentary. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. It's on A&E. There's a brand name I can't say because in my last video that I said it a lot in, my video got flagged and it's too much. So here we are. I'm answering questions specifically about the secrets of documentary, saving an interesting question for last, as always. So Emma asks me if I knew about the Linda Lovelace situation. And again, this is YouTube, so I can't elaborate on what the Linda Lovelace situation actually is because I will get mega flagged. But yeah, some shocking stuff went on with her. And I would say I was partially aware because I read her book. She wrote a couple books. One of them was called Ordeal. And that is a stressful book. I remember I read it when I was pregnant and I had to like skim over some of the chapters because they were stressing me out so bad. And I didn't want like that feeling of stress in my body because I thought it would be bad for the baby. But that book is intense. If you're looking for an intense, shocking read, that is it. So I was partially aware of some of the stuff going on, but I wasn't aware that she was drugged and made to do certain things. Maybe she wasn't even aware of it. I don't know. So yeah, that was shocking. Shan asks, do you feel like you were portrayed in a way that you liked? Well, I still haven't watched. I've watched every episode but the second one because that was the main episode I was in and I still haven't watched it. I don't know if I ever will, honestly. One thing I don't like is I feel like they chose a lot of still pictures of me from like my ugliest era. Like when I first moved into the mansion the first couple of years and was like experimenting with my look a lot. I feel like they love to go for those for some reason. And I'm not really sure why that is. I don't know if they were trying to do me dirty. I don't know if they thought it made me look more relatable. I don't know what that was all about, but those aren't the photos I would have picked. Mara asks, did you hear any of those stories from the other women before the documentary? Yeah, I did. In particular, Susie Kraybacher, I heard her story on YouTube. She did an interview for one of those like news magazines, like a Nightline or something. I forget which one it was. But after my book came out, somebody contacted me on social media and they're like, look at this link. You have to see this. And I thought she did such an amazing job just capturing how he gains your trust at first. And then when she talked about what ended up happening to her, you know, that was really shocking. And when I was talking to the director of the documentary, I sent her that link and I'm like, you have to talk to this woman. Darkly asks, were you aware that other girlfriends like Sandra had similar experiences to you? Sandra hadn't spoken out publicly before this, but I always kind of had a feeling, and one of the reasons I was so eager to hear her story in particular was I always had a feeling that she had gone through some stuff and that I would be able to relate, because she came up to the mansion for events sometimes, and you know, she was always really nice, but I always felt like she kind of looked like she was about ready to cry all the time. Like she kind of looked like somebody who was always kind of holding back tears, and I didn't know if that was because something was wrong or if just because that's the way she was, because I only met her a few times. I didn't really know. But then one of Hef's friends, I'm not going to say her name, but like one of Hef's older friends who was around during Sandra's era and was like part of that whole party crew. I don't even remember what brought this up, but she was telling me how they used to bully Sandra. Like she was like, yeah, you know, when Sandra came around, we all felt threatened because we didn't want Hef to have a girlfriend. So, you know, we would all watch, you know, home movies together. Not like those kind of home movies, but I think it was like just video of them like at parties at the mansion, you know, and we'd all cheer for each other when we came on the screen. But like when Sandra came on the screen, we like would go quiet. And I remember Bridget heard that story and she goes, that's not funny. And that same lady, and I don't remember what brought this up either, but that same lady once said to me, she goes, you know, Sandra always acts like she didn't, you know, now she says she didn't like what went on in the bedroom. And I'm like, well, it seemed like you liked it then. And I remember just being so disgusted when I heard that, because even though I was still at the mansion and like still really enamored with Hef, you know, I didn't like what was going on necessarily. And sometimes it's one of those things that you do because you think it's like making a relationship work or whatever. So I understood, you know, if Sandra felt like that way, what that was all about. And I was just kind of, okay, you're ignorant, you know, about the lady who was saying that to me. Ben asks, have you ever walked out of a mansion party before because of what you saw? No, I never saw anything really crazy, because when I would go to the mansion parties before I lived there, I never stayed very long. I would stay for a couple hours and I never really saw anything get crazy. You know, at the time in the early 2000s, those were really like hard to get invited to, like, you know, prestigious parties. So even though you think of it as a place where a lot of wild things happen, and probably did, in like the secluded corners, there were a lot of people there who were going there to like see and be seen, and were also like on their best behavior. So that was more the side of it that I saw. The only party I ever, you know, left because I was unhappy with the party was the very last one I went to. It was after I moved out of the mansion and I just finished filming my last scenes for Girls Next Door, and the Halloween party was coming up. And I'm like, I'm going to go to this Halloween party because I haven't been to a party where I don't have to sit at one table the whole night in years. This is going to be so fun. So I went, but this was also around the time where they were starting to hurt for money. So they were starting to sell tickets. It wasn't just like exclusive anymore like it used to be. And this was also like when smartphones happened, and all of a sudden everybody has a camera in their phone. And back when I first started going to the parties in the year 2000, you know, nobody had that, and cameras were like strictly forbidden. So I'm walking around and like, because I'm on a show that was shot at that place, people are kind of expecting to see you. So like, I can't take a step without somebody being like, can I take a picture? Can I take a picture? Can I take a picture? So it just wasn't fun. And it was so overcrowded. Like, I guess because they were selling tickets, they invited way more people than they usually do. Like, I could barely move, and I kept losing the people I was there with. So I finally was just like, okay, I'm over it. I never need to go to another one of these parties again. Anna's 97. By the way, if I'm shortening some of these usernames or mispronouncing them, please forgive me. It's just usernames get kind of funky sometimes. So Anna's 97 asks, did Kendra really lure the twins into Hef's bed? I can't really speak for that because I wasn't there for like the latter part of it. You'd have to ask somebody who was there. But I do remember going out that night. We all went out to a club for the twins' birthday. And on the limo ride home, I was sitting way at the opposite end of the limo from Hef and the girls, because I had already broke up with him and said I was moving out. And I didn't want to be that girl who was like still sitting next to him and like trying to get all the attention. Like, I wanted him to be like free to move on, because when I first became the main girlfriend, the lady who had just left would show up for like random dinners and stuff and literally like shove me out of the way. And I remember how bad that felt for me. So because I broke up with him, I just wanted to be out of the way and, you know, not impede on anybody. So I was way down at the opposite end. And I do remember her like really egging them on and like, you know, anything that happened after that, you'd have to ask them. I don't know. But I do remember her like really encouraging it and egging it on. After we got back, I was staying in bedroom 5 at the time while I was finishing up my last scenes for Girls Next Door. So I just went straight to that room. Like I wanted no part of anything. Brittany asks, in Girls Next Door's Mary seemed so sweet. How do you feel about how she's portrayed in the documentary? A lot of people have asked me this, and I do have to reiterate, I have not watched episode 2, the one that I'm in, so I don't know if anything was said about Mary in that episode. From what I did see, people keep asking me this all the time, like, you know, you're so close to Mary. Has your opinion ever changed? No, my opinion of her hasn't changed. Like, I know people have said that Hef would use her name to get extra prescriptions. And he did that with his other secretaries. He did that with Sandra, who was his 19-year-old girlfriend at the time. And I don't know if Mary knew about that or not. I know one of the secretaries did, the woman named Lisa who told the story. But I also feel like they probably thought there was nothing they could do about it. Like, this is their job. They want to keep their job. And if he's using their name to get an extra prescription, like, what are they going to do about it? And notice that, like, you know, this is like a pattern with abusers. Like, Hef uses the names of like people who are very dependent on him, like people who work for him, or his girlfriend who was 19 at the time. You know, he's not putting down relatives' names. He's not putting down the names of like friends of his. He's putting down names of people who are dependent on him, people he could possibly treat as collateral damage. I don't know. Like, people like him do things like that on purpose. Like, people like him do things like that on purpose. Like, they pick the people who are going to feel the most powerless. And also, some people would talk about Mary, you know, maybe not being on their side or not being helpful toward them or being dismissive. But my experience with Mary, and granted, like, I knew someone for a 10-year period of time, and we're talking about history that stretches back like 50 years. So people change over the course of time. So I'm not like arguing with anybody's story or anything, but just my feeling about Mary is like, she had a lot on her plate. She was very loyal to Hef, but when I was there, I didn't see her like recruiting anybody or anyone like it or anything like that. Like, she was Hef's secretary. So if he said, oh, call this girl and tell her, you know, invite her out with me and tell her we're meeting at this time and meet me here, you know, she would do that as a secretary, like relaying the message. But I never saw Mary like try to coerce anybody or try to like convince anybody to do anything that they weren't already inclined to do. That's just my experience and what I saw during the time I was there. And Mary was a very, you know, tell it like it is, abrupt person. She didn't sugarcoat things. So a lot of people were like intimidated by her. But my opinion on her hasn't changed. You know, she was somebody I was very close to, and I still have very fond memories of her. And when I decided to leave the mansion, she was very supportive of me and let me stay at her house for a while and was never trying to like get me to go back or, you know, push me back into it, when so many other people were, including like the producer of Girls Next Door was always trying to talk me into it. And Mary was always very supportive of me, you know, moving on and being independent, and she could see that I hadn't been happy there for a while. Shania Jade, and again, forgive me if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. Shania Jade asks, did you know about the shadow mansions? I didn't know about the shadow mansions in particular, but I'm not surprised just because there's this really like seedy underbelly in Hollywood of like people who kind of have money and they try to do like the Hugh Hefner thing and they try to take advantage of every young woman who is just off the bus from the Midwest trying to make it in Hollywood. You know, that's a whole energy in the city of Los Angeles. It's something that exists and probably always will exist, unfortunately. And it's gross. And yeah, I'm not surprised that there were shadow mansions. There was, I mean, I never thought of it as a shadow mansion. I never thought to give it a term, but there was a guy who, and I couldn't even tell you what this guy looked like, but I heard his name all the time because girls who would come up to the pool parties or maybe like some of Hef's girlfriends who moved out would later end up at this guy's house. And I heard some bad stories about bad things happening to people, and it just sounded crazy and not good. So yeah, I totally believe that there were a ton of shadow mansions. Bracken 909 asks, what's in the Elvis room? There is no Elvis room. There might be a room that people call the Elvis room. Like maybe it's the van room in the game room. And there was also like a red room and a blue room in the game room. I think those are the rooms that people want to call the Elvis room. But I remember there was like a rumor of an Elvis room going around even back when I lived there. And we asked Hef about it and he said, no, there's no Elvis room. Elvis never stayed at the mansion. The only connection he had with Elvis was one time in the 70s, Elvis chartered his jet. Hef used to have his own jet, and one time Elvis chartered it. So that's the only thing. Meg My Day 16 asks, are you shocked by anything that has come to light? Yeah, by a lot of it. And I think the most shocking thing that I just knew nothing about were all the horrible things that happened to some of the bunnies that worked at the club, that were treated really poorly or assaulted and then just fired. And then some of the club members who did those things were just allowed to come right back, which is very shocking. I want to say that was in episode 3. We heard a lot of those stories, but yeah, I was blown away by that right away. Hallie asks, were you provided with a strict diet to follow? I was not. I was always really thin when I was at the mansion, and nobody needed to provide me with a diet because I was so insecure living there. Like I was counting every calorie, and he never said anything to me about my weight, but I did witness him telling Kendra something about her weight. I witnessed him telling a playmate something about her weight at the table in front of everybody, which was like secondhand embarrassment extreme. So those things happened. Oscar says, talk more about when Hef pulled your hair. Bridget mentioned it in the doc, but not in your book. So there was this night we all went to the Queen Mary. It was in December 2005, I believe. And I want to say we were filming, but the footage never got used, or just filming part of the night. And it was me, Hef, Bridget, Kendra, and a couple other girls who were with us. And after filming and after like the events that we had gone there for, we wanted to go ghost hunting. I wanted to go with the girls and go explore. And Hef was like, no, you need to come to bed with me. And I'm sitting on the floor. All of us girls are sitting on the floor and he's standing up. And he just like grabs my hair like a caveman and starts to pull me toward the room. Luckily, he's not that strong, so he wasn't that successful. But it was just like one of those surreal moments, like, what is happening now? And it wasn't like a jokey thing either. It wasn't like, ding, ding, pull your hair, haha, come with me. It wasn't like that. It was like your property kind of a vibe, and it was gross. And just depressing that I couldn't even like hang out and do something fun with the girls. Like we're all on the same ship. Like I'm not, going off with other dudes or anything. And like I can't even do that. Sucked. This isn't really a question, but somebody goes, the twins said you were fake. I don't really know if they were saying I was fake or just the whole reality TV process was fake. Because with me, like if I'm supposed to be meeting somebody in person for the first time on camera, then I'm going to hang out back in the shadows and check my makeup and wait until the cameras are up before I go introduce myself or before I go talk to that person. You know what I mean? That was just something I had gotten the habit of doing after years of doing reality TV. And plus, I'm not the most talkative person anyway. And point number 3 is I was the editor of the Playmate features at the time. So I was their boss. Like I was trying to keep it professional. I wasn't like, let's talk about boys or whatever. I don't know. I don't really know, I don't really know what kind of a point they were trying to make or, how in context that statement was. I don't know. I don't know if they were trying to say I was fake or that just everything on the show was fake, or maybe that was their first clue that like, oh, things aren't going to be exactly as we see it on TV. I don't really know what point they're trying to make, but I'm not like offended by it. Like I've done enough interviews myself to know that things get cut weird or cut out of context. I just took it more as like the whole reality TV process is not as real as people might think. My biggest takeaway from that scene is like, I hate the pictures they use of me, the still pictures. I feel like that part came off more negative because they're using pictures where I'm like, making a face or like in a bad mood or something like that. So it's like, of course the viewer's going to hear the twins go, oh, it's all fake. Like she wasn't even talking to us until the cameras were rolling. And then it shows a picture of me where I look as mean as can possibly be. It's like, somebody asked me if I've received an apology from Kendra since this came out. No, and I'm not expecting one, but I hope some people feel dumb for like calling me a liar about certain things. And then all these other people are coming out confirming it. Like for instance, when my book came out, like obviously Kendra was really mad and wanted to respond, which she has a right to do by all means. But one thing I thought was kind of lame is like she kept responding for like 2 years via her show that she had on WeTV. And I know a lot of that was probably driven by Kevin Burns, the executive producer, because he was pissed at me for writing a book too, because he thinks he's the puppet master and he always wants to control the story. But it was excessive. Like she was like going off about me for like 2 years afterward. And one of the things she freaked out about was when I talked about the Quaaludes, she was like, he doesn't need to hand out Quaaludes. He's a pimp or something like that. And I'm like, he wasn't handing them out when she was there because one, his source of the Quaaludes was taken out of commission. So he didn't have as steady a supply anymore. And two, nobody in the group was like a recruiter during that era. So people who were like coming upstairs or trying to be a girlfriend, they were doing that. Not that any of us weren't doing it of our own free will, but they weren't being like pushed along. Like there was no recruiter. Like when I joined the group, there was a recruiter. You know, when Bridget joined the group, there was a recruiter. And when he's kind of relying on this system of like other girls helping him to get other girls and constantly having all these people, you know, coming upstairs, you know, he's using the drugs as well. But things had really slowed down by about 2004. Like nobody in the group was a recruiter. You know, there were still people coming upstairs, but it wasn't as many people. So he wasn't really like handing it out as much anymore. And when I first talked about the Quaaludes, I wasn't even the first person from my era to talk about it. Like other people had talked about it, but Kendra just wasn't aware of that. And she thinks because she was never offered one that it didn't exist. And it's like, hi, existed all these years and kept going after you. So I think before we jump to comment on other people's experiences, especially when we're talking about periods of time that we were not around for, we should cut them some slack and not act like we know everything. I mean, it never dies. Like Kendra still has her best friend out there trying to dig up dirt on me. So she might be acting like she's above it all, but like, come get your friend then. Monica asks, were you aware of what was happening with the twins when you were still at the mansion? When I was still living there at the very, very end, I was staying in room 5 just to like finish up my Girls Next Door scenes and kind of give myself a chance to like get everything together real quick. And I knew obviously something was happening that night at the birthday party when Kendra was like egging them on. Like I knew, okay, they're probably, you know, going in that direction, whatever, but I didn't know about anything else that happened after that they talked about just because I wasn't there. So I could never comment. Like people are always asking me, do you believe that one of them was pregnant? I'm like, who would I be to say no? You know what I mean? Like I wasn't there. Like I know how it feels for people to, like I just talked about, for people to be like, oh, she's lying because blah, 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 because it doesn't match their experience. But I didn't know much about what was going on with anyone in the years after I left the mansion. I just heard gossip like everybody else. You Belkis212 asks, what are your thoughts on Marilyn Garbowsky? So a lot of people were talking about Marilyn Garbowsky, who was the head of the photo studio at the mansion in the documentary. I mean, she was head of photo studio at the brand, not the mansion. I'm just trying not to say the brand name because I get flagged. And I can only comment on the period of time that I knew her, which was the early 2000s. Any stories that people have from any other eras, like the 70s, you know, I don't know what she was like back then. Like I've said before, you know, people change, people go through phases. So I don't know. All I can say about my experience with her is she really welcomed me into the photo studio with open arms. And she definitely was not trying to like get girls to like sleep with Hef during that period. Because when he was married in the 90s, Marilyn became really close to his wife. And ever since then, she was like always Team Kimberly. So she wasn't trying to like hook him up with anybody. She was always over at Kimberly's house, you know. Sometimes we'd see her in the gym at the mansion. But she was Team Kimberly. She wasn't trying to like, you know, hook him up with anybody. LA Woman says, it seems like his predator methods evolved. Were you aware of the sinister 70s and 80s? I knew the 70s were wild, but they were just like, what I knew about it was just like the positive spin on it, like from Hef's perspective. Like the 70s were really wild, and there was always like group activities going on, you know, if you get my drift. And everybody was so cool with it because it was a different time. Like, I didn't know about how anyone else felt on the other end of it. But there were clues over the years, like that one friend of Hef saying, Sandra said she didn't like all the bedroom stuff back then. You know, so there were clues. And also in Peter Bogdanovich's book, he talks about it a little bit and how, you know, sinister it was for the women involved. I didn't read that book until right before my book came out. So I didn't even know about that at the time. But no, I wouldn't have been aware of anything sinister in the past because I only knew the past of his life and the past of Playboy through his eyes. And after living there for years, there would be times I would stumble across like a book because he would keep an archive of everything written about him, positive or negative. So I might see like a book, like there was this book written called Bunny. I think it was written in the early 80s. But it said a lot of unfavorable stuff. And it was just like really hard for me to read at the time. I didn't even read the whole thing. It was just like, I remember opening it and seeing a page and being like, I don't want to know, you know, because this was a person I cared about at the time and I didn't want to hear negative things. And it's easy to write it off as like, oh, these people are haters. I think a lot of people are still writing us off as like, oh, these people are just haters. So the last question is Amanda says, is it true that you and Kendra ghosted the twins in the bathroom? I know what you're talking about, Amanda, because I read a People magazine article, and the People magazine article said that Kendra and I ghosted the twins in the bedroom on their first night, but I never went anywhere near the bedroom. And when the twins did their interview on the documentary, they said Holly wasn't in there anymore, meaning I didn't live in the master bedroom anymore. So it was free and clear. The only one, as far as I know, according to the twins, that went into the bedroom was Kendra. So I didn't ghost nobody. I knew the twins on a professional level as far as work. And then after I broke it off with Hef, anything that he did in his personal life, I didn't want any part of. It was his business. I just wanted to get out of the way, because I didn't want to make any new girls feel bad the way some of the ex-girlfriends had made me feel bad when I was new. And also there was a lot of guilt coming at me from people close to Hef when I left him. Like, how could you do this? How could you leave him high and dry like this? Which is ridiculous considering like he always had multiple girlfriends. And just because I happened to decide to leave after everybody else had left, like boo-hoo, he was alone for 2 seconds. But still, I felt that guilt. I still felt like I needed to get out of the way. And oh my gosh, I hope he moves on as fast as possible so I can be absolved of this. You know what I mean? And just not have that guilt on me. So I hope I answered you guys' questions, and let me know in the comments what kind of video you'd like to see next.